Welcome to Outside the Box here on the Stochastic YouTube channel. We'll be later on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel as well, because this is a Stochastic and Fantasy Points production. We're working together here to find the best plays in the industry, taking a look at the best DFS tools in the industry on Stochastic, some fantastic NFL DFS tools, and then the best data tools for all NFL data. Fantasy Points data suite, I think, is incredible. I've been using it a ton this year. So excited to look through it with Scott, who is probably the best in the world at using the Fantasy Points data suite to find the best notes. I know they've got a lot of good guys over there at Fantasy Points to find that data, but Scott, probably the best in the world. So really excited to be looking at these
I'm the
tools.
best. Fuck everyone else.
Yeah, fuck everyone else. Scott, we agree. We're on the same page here. Jake, Chris, get out of here. It's Scott number one. Excited to be looking at the tools together once again this week. We'll look at last week. We'll look at we'll continue our Survivor thing, even though you forced me, Scott, to not go to the team I wanted to go to. I went to the Rams instead, and honestly, I felt pretty good about it, but my Rams lost. We'll take a look at that as well. Who looks good in Survivor this week? But primarily, we'll be focusing on the best plays on the DFS slate. We'll take a look at some chalk. Seemed like overwhelmingly the feedback we got last week was, yes, do a brief overview of the chalk, what you like or dislike about the chalk. People agree that the overview is good, and then of course we will take a look, find some contrarian plays as well. Hoping that you can help me find some value, Scott, because I really like some pay up stacks this week. So I'm hoping you can find me some value pieces to throw in around those stacks, or maybe you'll convince me to go to some different stacks as well. But we'll talk about that more. Scott, first, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great also. Scott was telling me, like, this show is like when he gets to be able to start to relax on a Saturday, because he has so much work throughout the week that this is like when he finally is like, the work is letting up a little bit. He can relax a little bit, just talk some NFL. So I'm glad that I get the best of Scott when he's just relaxed, ready to talk some NFL. We've both been extremely busy today, as we were talking about before the show, but we're going to be able to relax a little bit during the show. We did move it up half an hour because I'm on NBA Live before lock, so we have a little bit more time. We were a little bit worried that with a 13-game slate, maybe we wouldn't be able to get it done in an hour and a half as we would have had to at the normal time. So we gave ourselves a little bit of extra time just in case we need to go over with these 13 games. By the way, I want to say thank you to everybody we actually got some sales on this show last week. I mentioned on the show last week, like, we were kind of hurting, like, people were getting a lot of positive feedback for the show. People are really enjoying the show, but like from a sales perspective, like not really making any money for the Stochastic channel. Last week, we actually got a few sales. So I really appreciate you guys stepping up, buying some of the tools. And, hopefully we can continue that this week. Hit the like button on the video. That also helps us out quite a bit. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Where should we start? Should we take a look at the winning Millie lineup from last week, Scott?
Yeah, let me just get a plug in for my site really quick as well. Yeah, at Fantasy Points, if you like this show, we're not going to be able to continue doing it if we don't get subs coming in from this show. Otherwise, I'm just pissing off my own subscribers for not putting this behind a paywall. But yeah, like you guys, we did see some subs roll in, so big thank you for that. Right now, Fantasy Points Premium, which includes college football, 50% off, standard subscription, 50% off, data suite, 75% off. Highly recommend Premium if you're a DFS player. You can read my slate breakdown, which is where a lot of, some of my player takes come from. I'll give you my cash core and my favorite low owned plays. Someone named Jordan Nocerino tweeted this out earlier in the week that I have the best hit rate of like any tool or article in the industry. If you look at, players written up versus whether they land on the Millie Maker. I've been like begging someone to do this for a number of years. Like, I just really think that's the case. Like, this article is perfect, especially for MME players, just narrowing down your pool. So definitely check that out. We have a number of different tools like you guys have as well. The data suite, which we'll show, we're going to have 5 new tools dropping next week that are so fucking insane. They're so sick. Can't wait to show you guys that next week. But fantasypoints.com. Thanks, Neil.
All right, so we'll take a look at some of the new tools next week. I'm trying to remember, there was something I was going to have you show me on this week's show, and I'm forgetting what it was.
Oh, schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed.
Yes, I want to take a look at that. You're gonna hopefully can help me take a look at schedule adjusted fantasy points that defenses are giving up, because I think that's a really interesting metric, something that I want to look at a little bit more. I was gonna, after you brought up your article, it reminded me I was gonna bring up that tweet from that guy who's been tracking how great your article has been, and not a surprise that Scott's article has been absolutely crushing for DFS players this season, finding some gems. All right, let's take a look at the winning Millie Maker lineup from last week. So this is the large field Millie Maker lineup. And, there have been some weeks where I've said, like, I think that, based on our analysis, there's a good chance, like, you could have gotten there just like watching our show. I don't know that I would say that this week necessarily. I mean, I guess we Mahomes to Kelsey was kind of an obvious one that we talked about. So I guess maybe we talked about a bit about Deontay Foreman last week. So that was good. A lot of things.
Yeah, I tried to pull some cold water on him at his ownership, and then you kind of made a really compelling case arguing back in his favor. Gibbs, we really liked. That was like a Sunday morning thing though, where it was just credit to John Proctor. It was like, okay, this is his projected ownership. This is just absolutely stupid. That was a player I definitely jacked up my exposure to. JSN obviously made a ton of sense with DK Metcalf out. Josh Downs is, I was hyping him up, and you're like, really against the Browns? But it's just, with Gardner Minshew, his volume is like mid wide receiver one. The production has been there. It wasn't a great matchup, but clearly mispriced and no one on him. That was one of my favorite low owned plays of the week. Kelsey plus Andrews. I personally never go tight end in the flex. But our guy Russ Miller, who won the Millie a few weeks ago, was on those two tight ends as like clearly the best tight end plays of the slate. Sutton, yeah, I don't think I would have got there.
I had a ton of Kelsey. I was well overfield on both Kelsey and Andrews and Darren Waller. So the tight ends, the double tight end was actually a big part of my builds last week, and that obviously worked out really well. JSN, for a little while, I thought I was going to have a mega profitable week. I was like creeping up towards profitability, and it was going up and up and up in the afternoon slate until JSN just completely fell off, like didn't do anything in the second half, and ended up losing money on the slate. Came close to breaking even at least, but didn't quite get there last week. Yeah, I don't think I would have gotten this lineup. A lot of these players are like, yeah, I do remember you now talking about Josh Downs. I couldn't buy in with you on Josh Downs. Now I wish I had, obviously. This is interesting. We have the Browns defense going up against Josh Downs in this Millie Maker lineup. Sort of interesting. You don't see that all that often, the defense against the opposing player. Cortland Sutton, I like this game environment for the Green Bay Denver game, so wasn't totally opposed to Cortland Sutton. Jahmyr Gibbs was actually somebody that I wasn't on, and then you messaged me in the morning on Sunday after some reports were coming out about the type of usage that they were expecting for Jahmyr Gibbs, and he certainly looked a lot better on Sunday. I don't think he looked as good during our show. Like at that point, there was still some question about like what is his role going to be relative to Craig Reynolds. And then Sunday, more news broke that was like, okay, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, he's going to be the bell cow, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of this was just like we didn't have all the information yet at the time. JSN similarly, like kind of thought that DK Metcalf might miss, but we didn't really know that until Sunday. So anyway, great lineup here for Death Star Canteen. Obviously worked out really well for him. Hopefully we can we can nail the winning Millie Maker lineup on stream this week, Scott. That's my goal for us.
Let's do it.
Just to win the Millie, just something easy like that.
Has that ever been done?
Oh, winning Millie Maker on stream? That's a good question.
I don't think so.
I'm not aware. I feel like we would have known. Like it would have been posted all over Twitter. Like watch him build the winning Millie Maker lineup. Yeah, I've never seen it.
All right, this is the week.
This is the week it's going to happen for the first time. Scott and I are going to make that winning Millie Maker lineup. All right, let's look at the survivor picks. So once again, Seahawks won, right, against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
So you got your W again last week. I did not get my W from the Rams, sadly. Now and you stole, by the way, you stole the Seahawks from me.
All right, you go first.
They're one of the few teams that I was allowed to use that I have not already used. All right, you're gonna let me go first.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Miami 9.5. Chiefs Chiefs are only, I guess it's in Denver, kind of makes sense. Baltimore 9.5. We got the Chargers 8.5. So we actually have some really nice spreads here this week. Some decent options here. All right, so my inclination is Eagles. Have I used the Eagles already? I have not used the Eagles. Let me just think for a second, because the Eagles are like, they're a team that I'm going to want to use in the future. So let me see if there's any teams that I would prefer to use now that I also think are smash. I mean, the Chiefs are obviously saying about the Ravens. I'd rather save the. Did I have already used the Ravens? I haven't used the Ravens. Actually, I think I would rather play the Ravens here because I know the Eagles are just going to be an absolute smash like every week. Chargers are not that good so far this year. They've been sort of surprisingly not good, and they're in about the best spot they can be against. I mean, T-Bag looked pretty good last week, but still facing that rookie quarterback, I'm going there. I'm going Chargers.
Damn,
I
that's
walked through them
exactly
all.
what I wanted.
I mean, it's a great, like, from a game theory perspective, just like they have some of, close to the best implied odds on the slate, and they're the Chargers, like just not as good of a team. So happy that I was able to steal your pick, if I'm being honest with you, Scott.
All right, I'll go with the Dolphins 9.5 implied total. I don't love spots like this against an in division opponent. There's injuries to Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, but it is the highest implied point, the highest spread on the slate. So after the Bills game, which concluded already. So that's what I'll go with.
All right, you're going Dolphins. I'm going Chargers. Looks good to me. Chris Oster,
I think I would have went Ravens if I were you, because we've just been, playing against Arizona has worked really well for us.
That is true. That it has worked really well. Yeah, those are close. But if I had done that, I couldn't have stolen yours, Scott. So I get the added benefit of just upsetting you. So that's always the goal. Chris Oster asking, what do you think of the Lions? Let me see.
I think that's another good call. I already used them, which is why I didn't mention.
Oh yeah, that looks like a good spot against the Raiders. I think Jimmy G is back, if I'm remembering correctly, but like that doesn't really move the needle that much. So yeah, I think the Lions make sense, and then you get your sweat on Monday night. So just add to the Monday night fun. I don't dislike that at all. All right, so we've got through survivor picks. We've got through looking at the lineup generator. We'll build a lineup later here. Let's move on and talk about some of our favorite quarterback plays on the slate. And I can move over to the boom bust, and we can take a look at projected ownership here. Or where would you rather look, boom bust or top stacks tool? Do you have a preference for what we're looking at here, Scott?
We usually start with this one. So
why don't we just start with top stacks? Yep. All right. So I was telling Greg earlier, I kind of love living in the more expensive range. Like Baltimore, Philadelphia make a ton of sense to me as places to go to start. He was also noting, though, that there's not a ton of value to get there. I was trying to find some value on the earlier slate. Maybe you can help me find some more value later, Scott. But let's just start at quarterback, and I guess rather than just going by price, we'll start by ownership. We have Lamar Jackson at 13%. We have Dak Prescott just over 10%, and then we have of those two. Let's start with those two. How do you like them? What do you think of the ownership for Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott? Are you willing to get to double digits on these players?
Lamar Jackson, sure. He's awesome. It's a great spot. I think you can make a case he should be the MVP favorite or just number 2 behind Patrick Mahomes. From a fantasy perspective, it really seems to be that case. You account for that weird game where Ravens receivers dropped 7 passes, the third most since 2017. Should have had an additional 180 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game at a minimum. And just throw that game out, and he's clearly easily QB1 from a fantasy perspective since week 2, despite 0 top 10 matchups over the span. And this is nearly best possible. Dak Prescott makes no sense to me if he's like the second highest owned quarterback of the slate. It's not a good spot. He hasn't played well. Michael Gallup has out-targeted CeeDee Lamb for 5 straight weeks. So I don't feel great about any of the stacks. I'm probably going to have 0 Dak Prescott this week.
For context, you're only playing a few lineups though, right?
No, I might play 10 this week.
Okay, so 10 lineups you would not have Dak Prescott. So you would
not if he's the second highest owned quarterback and he's not really that great of a play to begin with.
All right, let me give you a counterpoint. He's facing the Rams, who are 20th in terms of past DVOA. Now, of course, you have your own.
Yeah, I don't care about DVOA. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Do you have another catch-all pass metric that you like better?
Yeah, are you teeing me up for schedule adjusted fantasy points per game
kind
allowed?
of, yeah. Yes, I am.
All right, so we can check that out.
All right,
We could
let me pull that
also
up. So to find schedule adjusted fantasy points.
so you got to go to fantasypoints.com. It's not in the data suite.
Oh, I see.
But if you have a standard subscription, premium subscription, you could access this.
All right.
And so you go to research and news at the top, and then schedule adjusted all the way at the bottom to the left.
All right.
The Rams rank 17th by adjusted net yards per pass attempt allowed. They rank 24th in passing yards per game. Yeah. So that, well, now everyone knows your email, Neil.
I know. I was hesitant, but my email's pretty easy to guess. I don't really care.
Okay.
That's fine.
And yeah, so all right. I spend 60 hours a week doing fantasy football research. I love it. It's my probably 80, 100 hours. I don't know. It's my favorite thing in the world. I love it. But if you wanted to just save yourself a bunch of time, the bulk of my research process is really just XFP, expected fantasy points. And then that's backward looking. And then forward looking, just for matchups, is schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed. Really focus in on the top 5 to top 7 matchups and the bottom 5 to bottom 7 matchups. Everything within the middle bulk of your sample isn't going to be very important, very predictive, very sticky. But at those polar extremes, it's massive. And what this does is it's more predictive than anything else because it factors in and controls for the quality of the opponent. So basically, at the top, you see the Chargers defense versus Chicago Bears offense. Bears have the best matchup for quarterbacks because plus 9.6 schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed. Basically, all of the quarterbacks that the Chargers have faced this year have averaged 25 fantasy points per game against them, but in all other games, just 15 fantasy points per game. So you get that plus 10 figure rounding up. You know what I mean? And really just tested this over and over. Best way to look at this. And if you see this, you can just Control F LAR to hide or LA. There it is. And you'll see, oh no. That's what I do. Okay. Yeah. And so they're like 14th, and then click on passing because Dak Prescott's not really a mobile quarterback at this stage of his career. And so just click on, there you go. And now they're below average, minus 1.4 schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed. You can make a case for Dak, just that he's like Dak and he's historically cheap, but I don't think that's a strong matchup. You could also look at the wide receivers there. They're neutral against tight ends. They're really good. Oh wait, no.
Wait, is that what we want to do?
Control F Dallas. I just got confused.
Okay. Yeah.
Apologies to the folks. All right. Now look at it. All right. So passing.
Yes, passing.
All right. Now scroll down. Okay. Scroll all the way down. Yeah. So it's a bottom 5 matchup for Dak Prescott based on schedule adjusted passing fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks. It's not a good matchup based on this. It's not a good matchup based on opposing passer rating, adjusted net yards per attempt allowed, passing yards per game allowed, passing touchdowns, whatever you want to look at. Not a good matchup. Dak Prescott has not performed well from a real life NFL perspective, from a fantasy perspective. And we know what this coaching staff wants to do. They want to win via defense. They want to keep they want to go run heavy, give their defense a breather. And so to me, second highest owned quarterback of the slate, that's an easy fade because not much else is popping beyond that. And I think there's a lot of enticing quarterbacks to play this week.
I do really like some of the other quarterbacks. That is a compelling case against Dak Prescott, and I like that you're just taking a stand. And this is like to me, it looks like a decent spot against the Rams, but you're using really great data here to find
brutal matchups for you'll see brutal matchups for the outside wide receivers. Great matchup for the tight end. You want to just click on total tight end. right there. Yeah, and so a top 3 matchup for Jake Ferguson, neutral matchup for CeeDee Lamb in the slot, brutal matchup for Michael Gallup and the perimeter wide receivers. You could do, CeeDee Lamb plus Jake Ferguson. That's an easy stack that makes a lot of sense. It's just, I don't know, 2 underrated defenses. I like Pollard significantly more than Dak Prescott.
Okay.
Outside of that, I don't know that anyone's a must. Jake Ferguson's weirdly chalky.
All right. So not a great matchup for Pollard either, but that's just talent and opportunity play.
Again, like the bulk of my stuff is XFP and schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed. And Pollard's just like one of the most obvious regression, probably the most obvious since right before that 5 touchdown game from Joe Mixon last year. Just a massive regret. It's coming, it might not come this week, but like, it's just so, he's not my favorite running back play of the slate, but like massive upside, definitely a value. There's a few players like that. Your boy, Jalen Waddle, we've been talking about, Neil.
Yep. Of course, we have to worry a little bit about the Jalen Waddle like back injury now. So we'll talk about him once we get to wide receivers. But yeah, this is great data. This is exactly what I wanted to look at coming into the show, because I was like, you were showing it on Twitter, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I wanted. And I had asked you before the season, and you were like, oh, I've got these spreadsheets that I can use. This is just the online version of those spreadsheets. Much easier to navigate once it is, sortable on the website. So love that you uploaded this. Definitely something that I will be using going forward. All right. So you are in on Lamar Jackson, just taking it back to the slate. You are in.
Yeah, he's a great play. He's my cash quarterback of the week, probably.
Okay. And out on Dak Prescott. Keeping it towards the top. I mean, I think this is my favorite play on the slate. I want to hear if you are here with me on Jalen Hurts. We're projecting him for about 9% ownership. Only slight positive leverage here in terms of top stack odds for Philadelphia. But against that Washington defense, I mean, they got crushed by the Giants, by the Commanders. It's just they've been crushed by bad offenses. I'm just assuming that the Eagles are going to be able to just walk all over, do whatever they want against the Commanders through the air. What do you think of Jalen Hurts? Are you on that same page with me, or do you have reasons to dislike it?
Yeah, no, he's a great play. The only thing I'll say is like I like AJ Brown a lot more than Tyreek Hill, a lot more than Jamar Chase this week. Like, you never feel good about that. Tyreek Hill is having the greatest wide receiver season in NFL history. Jamar Chase has like 50-point potential in bad matchups. So you never feel strongly. It's just like the math of the matchup, recent production, and all that makes me like AJ Brown over them, especially when you factor in ownership on top of that. And just the way volume is shaken up since AJ Brown was caught on the sideline during that game in prime time yelling at Jalen Hurts. He's at like a 50% first read target share. So it could just be, that could limit like stacking potential, but I'm with you in that this matchup is just so good across the board. Hurts is balling out. He has that brotherly shove upside, which is such a cheat code. Yeah, he's a great play. I really don't have anything to say beyond that. I just think personally with the way I'll go is I'll try and get a little bit more creative and unique with quarterbacks, and will be overexposed to AJ Brown and just maybe hope not enough rushing touchdowns and target volumes as concentrated as it's been the past few weeks, but I get it.
Okay. So you like to play, but you might not get there a ton in your lineups. That makes sense. I mean, at this point, we touched on the top 3 owned guys. We can kind of open it up to, do we want to touch on Patrick Mahomes at all? I mean, he looks great in the tools. 8% projected ownership. I guess we probably should. 8% projected ownership, and then the rest are pretty contrarian. 11% chance of the Chiefs being the top stack. So it looks great in the top stacks tool. What do you think of Patrick Mahomes against Denver?
I'm starting to get a little bit worried about the weather. Like Adam Schefter, I think he's wrong, but he tweeted out that it's going to be like 13 degrees with like 8 to 14 inches of snow, which is just like, that's something I always like wait till Sunday morning to see how real this sort of stuff is, but that's definitely something to worry about. The 49ers exposure, I'm guessing that's not adjusted for the fact that Purdy is going to start, but I do like Purdy. Doubt he's going to be half that in terms of ownership. Love CJ Stroud dub stacks are just so easy with underrated upside. I really like that. let me check my notes. This is what I was trying to say about Hurts, who's like a great play, is just there's spots to go unique. Like Joe Burrow at 4% ownership. This is the cheapest he's been in like 3 years. He's 1,500 cheaper than he was at the end of last season. After the bye, he should be fully healthy.
Yep.
T. Higgins should be fully healthy. And so this offense could be firing on all cylinders. And if you wanted to go back to the schedule adjusted thing, this isn't a terrible matchup. Like it's not as bad as it's getting credit for.
I mean, in this.
Okay.
Right?
So do by passing. And you'll see it's like below average.
Okay.
Like I'm not saying it's a good matchup, but it's just like by this metric, it's slightly below average, but it's also like Josh Dobbs had 28 fantasy points against them just last week. Kirk Cousins without Justin Jefferson had 378 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against the 49ers. And that's the only top 18 fantasy quarterback they faced this year. You saw right before the bye, the Bengals had a massive pass rate over expectation back to where it was at the end of last season. And when Cincinnati has an above average pass rate over expectation, they're like Burrow and the Bengals are above Mahomes. They're above a lot of these premium quarterbacks. And so I just think at this ownership and like historically low price tag, Joe Burrow makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's funny. I instinctively, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to play a quarterback unless it's like an elite quarterback. I'm like, I'm not going to play that quarterback against San Francisco. But you're right. Like last week, the Vikings would have done just fine against that San Francisco defense. So maybe I'm overrating them somewhat. Like they clearly have the talent, but it seems like teams are still able to sometimes get it done against the Niners.
Can we go back? There was one more quarterback I definitely wanted to pound the table for. Yeah, Tua Tagovailoa below 5%. Tua should never be below 5%. This is a player I want exposure to every single week. The Dolphins are currently averaging 34.3 points per game. That's the 9th most of any team in NFL history. They have the highest implied point total of the slate, and people don't want to play that in DFS. Just doesn't make sense to me. It's just the best, most potent offense in football. I don't think the matchup is good. I worry about the health to the receivers. I worry about all that. Yep. It's just the top power law offense at sub 5%. No, I'm going to play it.
And it's a spot like you can play 8% and you're above the field. Like you can, you don't even need to like jam them in there to be above the field here at sub 5% ownership for Tua.
Yeah. Another one is either Derek Carr or Gardner Minshew. I personally lean Carr. I know Graham Barfield definitely leans Minshew, but I wrote like 800 words on this in my article, The Everything Report, where it's just you really want to be targeting this Colts offense. Right now, they rank second among all teams in combined points per game. Their pace of play is top 3. They have a garbage defense. And so they're just a good bet for their games to go over every single week. In Minshew starts, we saw one game where they trailed throughout, where he threw 55 times. And then you saw 2 games with more competitive game scripts. The running backs combined for 35 plus carries. Derek Carr, again, hasn't played well, but he's thrown 50 plus pass attempts and gained 300 plus yards in back-to-back games. Basically on both sides, there's like massive PPR potential, even if both quarterbacks like suck in this game. But it is a great matchup for Carr. And it's just, I really like the stacking options. Josh Downs, I think, is a cash play this week. Pittman's in play. Love Jonathan Taylor this week. Alvin Kamara is obviously chalk and a great play. Love Chris Olave. Love Rashid Shaheed. So if I were an MME player like you, I would definitely make a few different lineups with those players and let the computer or algorithm, whatever, just figure out the stacks for me.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah, I definitely with you. I'm going to be playing some Carr. I think I'm with you. I lean the Carr side over the Minshew side, but you can definitely make an argument for both. I understand that. Miami looks really great in the tools. So they.
Oh wow! Yeah. See.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Just like you got to
guys
play
know what's
some
up.
Miami. It's similar to like the Dodgers or I guess the Braves in MLB DFS. Like you just throw one in there, no matter how bad the matchup is. They're just so good that no matter who they're facing, they got a shot to take off. You already mentioned Houston. Any interest in Bryce Young?
No.
Okay. I do. I have a little bit of interest in Bryce Young. The price tag is there. I like that they have handed over play calling duties to their offensive coordinator now. So I'm like, maybe that changes things up. They just coming off a bye. Like there's a lot of factors that to me are like, yeah, we don't really know what they're going to look like after, changing who's doing the play call and after a bye week.
What is his name? Thomas Jones. He did say he wants to go more run heavy.
All right. I mean, that's not ideal.
But yeah.
Yeah. But it's a different look, I just maybe I'll take a few shots there, and it's a great matchup against Houston, which has been, according to I haven't looked at the fantasy points out loud, so maybe they don't look as good in this metric as let's see, let me take a look at it. Yeah, so Houston, looks like
neutral matchup.
Yeah, so decent enough matchup with Houston. I don't know. I might take some shots there just at relatively low ownership there for Bryce Young. And then I was actually just about to bring up my own team, and then I see Colin saying worst Vikings fan of all time. My God, I don't. What did I say about the Vikings? I don't remember saying anything bad about the Vikings, other than noting that they did surprise me against the Niners. If they didn't surprise you, then I don't know. I think you've got a crystal ball. They should have surprised you even as a Vikings fan. But looking at the tools here, Kirk Cousins, we're projecting for 0.4% ownership, 4.9% chance of being optimal. Green Bay, a nice spot for the Vikings. I think I kind of have to go there. Like just given the value without Justin Jefferson in there, given the value, like Hawkinson is a reasonable 6,200. I'm kind of thinking like maybe this is a KJ Osborne week. And I know you said it, Scott. You think he's like the worst wide receiver in the history of the NFL. You think that a 5-year-old is better than KJ Osborne. However, I mean, if Jair Alexander is shadowing Jordan Addison at all, you would think that would be a benefit to KJ Osborne. He did have at least a couple spike weeks last season. So I'm like, I'm a little bit interested in going to Kirk Cousins to KJ Osborne stack. Is that wrong of me to even think about it?
No, not at all. Cousins is like one of the most underrated players in DFS history. Just he's in the winning lineup with a stack more often than he's ever played. If you look at the schedule adjusted stuff, you'll see like Green Bay is a tough matchup, and they are a run funnel. I don't think that matters for the Vikings just because they're a pass funnel offense. So you'll see negative 2.0 against the pass, but plus 3.5 to running backs on the ground. So they would rank for me as like one of the top run funnels. But again, that doesn't really matter when like the Vikings just hate their running backs and are better off abandoning the run. I think that's sharp. Yeah. I kind of already hit on all the quarterbacks I'm planning on playing. Okay. I didn't have Cousins in my notes, but at 0.4% with like the obvious stacks, I think that's a good call. Christian Watson maybe on the bring back. I really like him. I do also have Trevor Lawrence in my notes. Like I'm a big time Trevor Lawrence hater, but it is just like a nut spot for all the wide receivers in this game. So the stacks are easy. It's a fringe top 10 matchup for him. And then Sam Howell, who like is a shitty real life NFL quarterback, but has like been pretty underrated for fantasy, and the Eagles defense has been super overrated for fantasy. So those are the last two guys in my notes, but I probably not sure I'm going to have any exposure to them if I run out like 10 lineups this week.
Okay. I think that we basically hit on every stack that I wanted to bring up anyway. I'm just trying to see if I was kind of thinking about Zach Wilson. Like, I don't love going to Zach Wilson, but he is playing, I think it's a faint praise, but the best football of his career so far, I'd say in recent weeks for Zach Wilson. Nice matchup there with the Giants. Is he just completely off your radar?
I wouldn't play him just because like he's never had a good fantasy game ever. So like I'll just
I suppose.
But he makes sense as leverage off of Breece Hall, the chalkiest player this slate. I'd rather just play Garrett Wilson personally, but I get that. There's also something about the Giants, like whenever they face a shitty quarterback who has a really good running back and it's like a run first offense, they do some weird changes with their defense. I forget exactly what they do, but it's like those high end Jihad Ward, they do something with him. I don't remember, but those high end running backs always flop. I guess they just stack the boxes. So I could see this being like, because if you look at the Giants, the last 2 seasons, they're one of the best running back matchups by adjusted yards before contact per attempt. But it's always like in the games against good running backs that just like drops because I guess they intentionally sell out to stop the run. So there might be something there, but I personally wouldn't play Zach Wilson.
Okay. Totally fair. And then we had some questions about Will Levis. Are they still, like they were saying earlier in the week, they're going to do like a rotation of quarterbacks there in Tennessee? Is that still the case, or have they finally just decided to go to Will Levis? Do you know what the latest is?
I have no idea on that. Atlanta's a scary defense. The word on Will Levis, like most of my guys weren't high on him at all, but there were some smart people who were like, oh, he's Josh Allen. And then there were a lot of other people who were like, he's a worse Drew Lock. So okay. Like maybe there's some volatility there at a cheap price tag. I probably wouldn't be chasing that though.
Okay. All right. We're ready to move on to running backs then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Let's talk about some running backs on this slate. Hopefully, as I said, I'm kind of counting on you, Scott. I mean, I have some value plays that I like, but it would be helpful if you can find some more value plays for me to allow me to pay up for the Jalen Hurts stacks that I want to go to, the Lamar Jackson stacks that I want to go to. So we'll talk some running backs. I do want to say, guys, so I mentioned earlier that we finally got some sales last week, which I really do appreciate. We do also have a great offer, so you can zone out if you're not in one of these states. But if you're in one of these 6 states, you should listen up. If you're in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, or Colorado, we've still got a fantastic deal going on with Bet365. It's simple. You bet $5, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you haven't already signed up for Bet365. So if you live in one of those states, Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, and you haven't already signed up for Bet365, fantastic deal. Use the link in the description of this video. When you sign up, you bet $5, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Of course, you have to be 21 plus to gamble in most states. It's 18 plus in Kentucky. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we can move on. Talk about some running backs here, and sorted for ownership here. We have Christian McCaffrey at the top, 23% projected ownership. Tony Pollard, 21%. Alvin Kamara, 20%. We'll go down to all the way down to Pacheco. We have Breece Hall at 19% and then Pacheco at 17% projected ownership. What do you think of this? Are there any major fades for you of these top 5 major like slam spots? What do you think of the chalk here?
Yeah, I'll just say like our numbers really disagree with you guys. We have CMC at 12%. We have Breece Hall easily number 1 at 33%. And I do think that's how it's going to be shaking out in tournaments like the Millie Maker. It could be the Sam Darnold thing if you guys haven't corrected for that, just because that would allow you to pay up for McCaffrey. Hall I think is going to be the chalkiest play of the slate. Obviously, he makes a ton of sense. I might fade him just because I try and always fade the highest owned play of the slate. You could also say like, okay, first play of the game, Zach Wilson, sack, fumble. You know, they're down and they're trailing the entire game. And it's just not a hospitable environment. And Zach Wilson does Zach Wilson things. And like I said, Giants play differently against run heavy offenses. But I mean, amazing play. Alvin Kamara, amazing play. Isaiah Pacheco, amazing play. But these are all guys I'm going to get exposure to via cash. Reminder to the audience, this is an outside the box contrarian GPP show.
Yep.
And so like a counter argument against Isaiah Pacheco in the nuts spot, really good volume, top 10 in fantasy points per game, XFP per game over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Is just that he does get pulled near the end zone. Mahomes is very greedy near the end zone. Kamara, you could say, you know, like, dude, it's so a guy gets double digit carries and 14 targets, which he's done twice.
Yeah.
The expectation should be 28 to 40 fantasy points. Like that's how insane that usage is. So like you're just being like intentionally picky here, but it's like, well, Taysom Hill, you know, was getting the goal line carries and the ones that Kamara was getting, he wasn't doing anything with. But realistically, these are all scary fades to the point where I don't know. You heard what I said about the quarterbacks and some of the receivers, where I think my lineups are going to be naturally unique, where I might not be afraid to kind of just put in some chalky running backs this week. Okay. We'll see.
All right. So no fades that you absolutely love of the chalky guys, which often, I mean, I feel like running back is a little bit more projectable than wide receiver just because it's more volume based in general. I guess Devin Achane maybe broke that whole theory when he's getting over 10 yards per carry, but in general, like running back, the chalk tends to be a little bit better at running back, I would say, than wide receiver, just because the touches are a little bit more guaranteed. So yeah.
One thing I'll say is I would have Travis Etienne right there with Kamara and Pollard. In
terms of ownership, or in terms of like as a play?
In terms of like where they should be, ignoring ownership. Like I personally would have expected 3 days ago ownership to be at least tied with Pollard, right? And the fact that it's not, I think, makes him an interesting GPP play, because like our ownership saying the same thing. He's going to come in well below those guys.
Okay, and we have ETN 5th in the entire NFL, in running backs on the year in PPR in expected fantasy points here.
He's first in touches. He's getting the goal line work now. He's playing well. So maybe not a perfect matchup, but that's okay when you're seeing like the usage he's been getting. Yeah.
And then we also saw DeAndre Swift is right up there in terms of expected fantasy points as well, up there at 107 fantasy points. So not far behind ETN. We have DeAndre Swift. He's 6,300. Not a great matchup. Kind of a pass funnel for the Commanders. Is 15. Do you think this is too much ownership going to DeAndre Swift?
Probably a little bit. He's another good play. Among all slate eligible running backs, he's 6th in XFP, 7th in fantasy points per game since week 2. He's priced as the RB10. Eagles are favored by 7 points. This is like a top pass funnel defense.
Yep.
I mean, he's seeing target volume. So he's a little bit more consistent and of a high floor play than he's getting credit for. But in terms of spike weeks, spike week upside, I don't know. Okay. I do think like running back ownership looks pretty good so far in this week.
Okay. Camp Burke says it's dumping snow in Denver right now. So maybe the weather thing is real. We're just gonna have to be monitoring that, I think. All right. CMOS, how do I get the perks you guys always offer for using your avatar? So CMOS, if you go to stokastic.com/avatar, download the Stokastic avatar. You have to make that your avatar on DraftKings, FanDuel, wherever you're playing. And then if you finish in the top 3 of a contest of 5,000 or more without being duplicated, then you'll get into the Stokastic Hall of Fame, get your free month of Stokastic package. So that is how you go in stokastic.com/avatar to answer that question. I feel like I kind of want to just open up to you. Actually, before I open up to you more generally, Scott, I do want to ask you about Jonathan Taylor. I know we have the latest I've seen is that Zach Moss is questionable, but I think he is. Greg was saying that he's not expected to play. So Jonathan Taylor, like 6,200, the price tag feels a little bit low to me, especially if Zach Moss is going to be out. What do you think of Jonathan Taylor with and without Zach Moss, or if you have a read on what's going to happen there, you can just tell us that scenario.
Yeah, I think he might be the best running back play of the slate. I think he probably is. Like I was saying, in 2 of Minshew's 3 starts, the running backs combined for 35 or more carries with a ton of passing down work. And if you combine Moss and Taylor into one player, this is easily the most valuable backfield in fantasy by like a pretty wide margin. Dallas would rank 2nd. And so 50-50 committee by snap share, but by XFP, it's been more like 60% in Taylor's favor because he was getting the bulk of the passing down work and the bulk of the near end zone usage. And 2 weeks ago, he ranked 10th in XFP. Last week, he ranked 4th in XFP. And he did that again, despite ceding 45% of his snaps to Zach Moss. And now Zach Moss is dealing with multiple injuries. I think he missed 2 days of practice, was limited in the only other game. So I see just like massive slate wrecking potential. I tried to pull it up in my article, but it was basically like, oh yeah, if Taylor gets just 65% of the backfield, he would rank second among all running backs in XFP per game. So he really doesn't need much. And then when you're talking about the possibility for Moss to be seriously limited, that goes up to 80%, which maybe he deserves because he's Jonathan freaking Taylor. It's just like massive slate wrecking potential. Running backs have looked really good in this offense and seen a ton of volume. So yeah, I love me some Jonathan Taylor.
Here's the question. Do you think that you would, if you're playing Jonathan Taylor, would you prefer Moss to be in or out? Because part of me is like, if Moss is in and limited, like maybe Taylor gets there anyway at just lower ownership. Whereas if Moss is ruled out, like I think more of the field will see that. Maybe I'm overestimating how many people will react to that. But what do you think?
I was thinking the exact same thing. I almost put that in my article where it's like, okay, Moss is out, lock button, just put Taylor in there. Probably every lineup. If Moss play like that excites me more because he'll go overlooked.
Awesome. Glad we're on the same page there. So Jonathan Taylor certainly in play either way. Now let me just open it up to you more broadly. Tell me about some of your favorite contrarian running back plays. And would you rather sort by salary or just keep it sorted by ownership?
Yeah, keep it on ownership. I'll just say, Christian McCaffrey, obviously, Bijan Robinson, Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, all those guys, their ownership looks good, or it just makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My favorite GPP running back play this slate, maybe above Jonathan Taylor at ownership because I'm not seeing him. Where do you guys have Raheem Mostert?
Where do we have Raheem Mostert? Here we go. Yeah, 1.4% projected ownership for Raheem Mostert. 7,700. Okay, that's why he's so expensive in a tough matchup with the Patriots. No.
He feels expensive.
You're right. He's been worth it like almost every week.
He has season highs of 45, 37, 29 DraftKings fantasy points through 7 games. If he has a performance like that, you're going to regret not paying up for what feels like expensive. Massive slate wrecking potential for a player who you have at 1.4% ownership. What has been the biggest cheat code in fantasy this year? It's Miami running backs, right?
Yeah.
So I will say matchups maybe not the best in the world, although game script should be excellent. And he is banged up. We don't know how seriously it's an ankle. Mike McDaniel was like, he'll be okay, but he was limited in practice throughout all week. But just no brainer. Raheem Mostert, whatever you want to call him. Great play. And then after that, there's a bunch of punt running backs I want to talk about. But
yeah, that's what we call it on Raheem Mostert because he's one of those players that doesn't jump out at me. But like, yeah, you're right. Until you look at the ownership, but once you look at that ownership, it's like, yeah, I mean, like you just need him to do like what he has done in half of his games so far this year to pay off that price tag. So yeah, you're right.
It dates back to last year too. Like he was the ultimate GPP play. He was averaging like 28 fantasy points per game in his top 50% of games and like 5 in his bottom 50. So it's just like super volatile, which you want to lean into in GPPs.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Who else do you want to talk about?
Yeah, the punt running backs. Amari DeMarcado, like obviously a strong play. He was a highest end bell cow last week, 96% of the backfield XFP. Your boy Rondale Moore did see 4 carries and a target coming out of the backfield, but still insane workload. And Arizona's like running game has been like underrated this year. Not a ton of fantasy points, but like in terms of ground game efficiency, it's been good. I will just say you guys have him at what? 7.4%. That feels good. Darrell Henderson, 3%. I think that's interesting. Like Sean McVay told us last week that Henderson was going to be limited in that game. And what happened? He had 18 carries, 2 targets, top 10 in XFP. He's not that good. The matchup isn't good, but I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a full-on bell cow workload this week. That's McVay's boy.
Yeah, 16 expected fantasy points last week. Yeah, it's like it's a tough matchup with Dallas, but also Kyron Williams is getting it done in a tough matchup. Do you think Kyron Williams is any better than Darrell Henderson?
I do. I think Henderson kind of stinks. He was on the XFL a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah. I think he was signed to an XFL team like earlier in the day before the Rams signed him, I believe.
Yeah, but he's also definitely the passing down guy. We definitely trust him the most in that role, and probably going to be negative game script and more targets than usual, fewer carries than usual, which serves him well. And then I have a bunch of galaxy brained running back takes.
All right,
the one I feel most strongly in is Salvin Ahmed at 4,600. It's just, hey, I just said Raheem Mostard's banged up, right? Potentially, he was the clear RB2 last week. And Miami's shown multiple times that 2 Miami running backs can fit in a winning lineup. Doubt I'm going to have maybe one lineup of 10, but it's just like, I could see it happening. And then Miles Sanders, I initially liked over Henderson, over DeMarcado, because before that injury, he was 8th in XFP per game. I'm backing off of that because Frank Reich and the OC both kind of were just like, yeah, it's going to be a committee. He stinks. But I was on that early in the week. Devin Singletary, you can make a case for. I just think Houston hates Dameon Pierce based on the comments coming from Bobby Slowick. It's basically like, listen, he's a good kid. He just doesn't fit our offense. And we saw Singletary seriously outsnap him. Carolina is one of the biggest run funnels. Probably not going to play him, but those are the last guys on my list. So,
all right.
And there are some lineups, just like there are going to be some lineups where you're like, damn, like this is perfect. I just need a punt running back. So it might make sense.
All right. I was going to bring up Dameon Pierce as somebody that interests me against Carolina. Even if he doesn't perfectly fit that offense, like this feels like a spot where, he doesn't necessarily need a huge workload, but
so he was, before the bye, the single least efficient player in fantasy measured by fantasy points versus XFP. Not great. And then Bobby Slowick had this comment where he was like, yeah, well, we run an outside zone scheme and, it's been an adjustment and a struggle. And then immediately after, Singletary gets the lion's share of the work and Pierce's work was trending down. So I can see it. I just, I'd rather play Singletary personally.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense too. But both are like relative punt options. You have provided several punt options already, which I appreciate. Let me see. Let me sort by salary, because I think that's easier for me to see if I have more questions for you. All right. So here's one Galaxy Brain play. Derrick Henry, like, first of all, do you think is he on the trading block, and does that affect your interest in him at all if he's active tomorrow?
Not the trading block stuff. Okay. I mean, I could see him getting like 40 carries this week just because Will Levis probably stinks and he's inexperienced and they want to hide him. But I don't know. There were a lot of games last year where Tannehill missed and Henry didn't do anything just because the offense couldn't advance the ball down the field and defenses just stacked the box.
Yep. Just got a question about what do we think of, I'll pull up the question, Madison and Akers this week. And Akers has got a little bit more of the workload last week than he has seen in the past. We actually Madison looks pretty good in our tools right now, but I think that it's sort of a hard spot to project. So part of me is like, I mean, what if we just Galbrain our ways to, like, if Akers continues to see his snap share rise up, as you can see here, he had 10 rushing attempts to Madison's 8 last week, played a lot fewer snaps, ran fewer routes. Like, there's a lot that is in Madison's favor here. But one thing that's in Akers' favor is it's kind of a swinging pendulum, and like is swinging towards Akers based on last week. As you can see, 8 for, where's the yardage here? We had Madison went 8 attempts for. Am I missing it?
8 carries, 3 targets for Madison, 10 carries, 3 targets for Akers. But Madison got more of the near end zone work, which is why his XFP was higher. I just think that, like, it's one thing to be stuck in a 50-50 committee backfield, but it's another thing to be like the least efficient running back in football, which Madison and Akers kind of both are.
I understand that it's just, part of me is I'm just trying to find value to get so I can get up to play my Lamar and Jalen Hurts stacks. So I'm looking for some Galaxy Brain.
No, I get it. You can't like shit on a Galaxy Brain play. That's what they're there for, is like, no one's playing them and they are cheap, and you can make an upside case for everyone. If his snap share this week was where it was 2 weeks ago, like I might be all in on him. And who knows, maybe they just go back to that.
Yeah, that is fair. I also saw some indication that maybe the Dolphins, just getting back to your Salvon Ahmed play, my biggest concern is that they did say that they want to get Jeff Wilson more touches. So I'm a little bit concerned that
right. So that's fair. But to me, Jeff Wilson was a healthy scratch 2 weeks ago for the offensive lineman. And then
you actually messaged me because that was the Sunday Night Football game. You messaged me because I do a lot of showdown content, and you told me like, hey, based on this would indicate that Salvon Ahmed is actually the RB2, and people are treating it like Jeff Wilson was the RB2, and that was great alpha because it turned out to be you were absolutely right. They used Salvon Ahmed more in that game than Jeff Wilson, but
and then he barely played last week, right?
So, yeah, he got very few snaps. So, but I think that there's at least some possibility that they're working
for sure
Wilson back in there. So just a concern to bring up, but yeah, not anything that's all that important. You said that you would have been interested in Miles Sanders. What about Chuba Hubbard? Like, do you think Chuba Hubbard's taken on enough of that role that he's?
Yeah. So that's the thing is like the vibes from those pressers were atrocious on Sanders. Like they hate his guts now. And Hubbard has looked good. I'm probably just not going to play either guy. And
okay, that's fair. But Hubbard at least like maybe a Galaxy Marine play if you're looking for somebody. If you have a chalky lineup, paying up elsewhere. And then we didn't. Did you talk about Gus Edwards at all? Gus Edwards and/or Justice Hill. Like, do you have any interest there against the Cardinals?
Nah, not really.
I think I do, just because of the spot. Okay. I feel like it's hard for me to not want to go there at least a little bit in that spot. Now they did like their carries were like pretty evenly split, so I don't love that. But like in my non-Lamar lineups, like this is still, they're getting some snaps. I guess 14 rushing attempts for Gus Edwards, ran 7 routes. I don't know. It's a little bit tough because it is so split. Like Justice Hill running more double the routes than Gus Edwards. But like just the matchup against Arizona, like is one of those spots that I'm always willing to play the running back against Arizona, or almost always willing. And I feel like this is a spot where Baltimore could just like hang 42 on him, and it wouldn't shock any of us. And obviously the running backs are likely to do well in that spot. So I think as a gal brain, like trying to pay down at running back, I think I'm in on. I might play some Gus Edwards. I'm a little bit more thinking about like, do I want to think about Justice Hill just because of the routes? But he'd be better, I guess, in a game where they're playing from behind. So leaning toward Gus Edwards, but also
that was the best usage he's seen all season last week. 14 carries to 4. Before that, it was like 12 to 11 every week.
Yeah. And then finishing the conversation on Derrick Henry, Tyjae Spears was the other part of that equation of the gal braining, like, well, what if Derrick Henry, what if they don't want to run him 40 times? What if they want to, go to their running back of the future, save Derrick Henry in case he is in trade talks? Tyjae Spears at 4,700, 0.1% ownership. Can you, any interest in Tyjae Spears if you're like MMEing the largest field stuff, or is that too far?
Probably not, but that would be so sick if like the Eagles called before the game, like, hey, put Derrick on ice.
Yeah.
We're going to work something out. Don't want him getting hurt.
Yeah, just really trying to find some gal brain plays here so that I can play the.
These are my favorite, dude. I love gal brain.
All right. Any other running backs you want to talk about, or should we move on to wide receivers?
Yeah, just someone asked about Saquon Barkley. I'll just say like the Giants have the lowest implied point total of the week. They're below Will Levis and the Titans. This is like one of the lowest I've ever seen. This game probably just sucks for fantasy. But that was my reasoning for kind of just crossing him off my list. But like the argument based on usage is definitely there. Talent probably there.
Okay.
Matchup's not great, but whatever.
Yeah, but yeah, just the usage is so elite that always in play, but not a great spot.
Well, actually, the matchup's not terrible. Jets are kind of a run funnel this year, but
oh, are they? Okay. Nice. All right. I think we've talked about like basically every running back that I had any real interest in. With Aaron Jones' hamstring, it's just so hard. Otherwise, I might have some interest in Aaron Jones, but the hammy really makes me not want to go there too much. Yeah, I feel like we've touched on all of the most interesting plays to me. All right, we can move on. Talk about some wide receivers. I'm going to let you guess who is the wide receiver on this slate, Scott, that you think that I am. And I'll tell you right away that he is on the expensive end of the scale. who is the wide receiver that you think, knowing some of my past proclivities, who's the wide receiver that you think that I'm all in on this week?
Jalen Waddle.
So that's a good guess. Who is another wide receiver who you might consider similar to in some ways to Jalen Waddle?
Devonta Smith.
Devonta Smith. I fucking love Devonta Smith this week.
Man.
You sound disgusted by the play, but come on, they're facing the Commanders.
Right. The thing with the Commanders though is like they're getting destroyed by wide receiver ones, and they're getting destroyed by D threats specifically. I could see it. I mean, like he's due. To me, I just want to target AJ Brown, who's just like he chewed out Jalen Hurts on the sideline. Since then, he leads all players in air yards, targets, first read targets, yards, fantasy points. And his like usage like is quietly growing at a 51.4% first read target share last week. That was a season high. He's hit 125 yards in 5 straight games. And it's like the nuts matchup for wide receiver ones. This is the same Commanders defense he just destroyed a few weeks ago, basically retired Emmanuel Forbes. If you want to count Darren Waller as a wide receiver one, then the Commanders are giving up 32.6 DraftKings fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones over their last 5 games, which is basically what AJ Brown's been averaging: 11.8 targets, 28.8 DK. But if you just want to say, hey, this guy is due, he's really good, maybe Washington sells out to stop AJ Brown, like I get it. That's not the route I'm going. I think for potential leverage play wide receiver twos, I like Waddle more. I might like Higgins more.
You're not going to talk me off it, Scott. I appreciate you giving the counterpoint. All right. So I don't
we gotta turn this into something where you get a prize if you win.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I like that. And nothing happens if I lose. I like that idea. Just if I win, I get a prize. No.
Well, I mean, he's at what? What's his ownership?
0.9%.
Yeah, you'd have to bake that in. It's easy to argue against someone no one's playing.
Yeah, exactly right. And I want to be clear. Both of us know that somebody being due is like bad analysis. Like there's nothing to like this player is due. We both understand that that's not great fantasy.
No, I think there's something to that. You just look at Devonta Smith from week 12 of last season all the way to week 2 of this season. He ranked third among all wide receivers in receiving yards, right? And what does he have the last 5 weeks? Nothing. Like he's shown he's good. We know he's better than the stat lines we've seen. So if you frame it that way, I definitely think there's something to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's different framing, but that is essentially the analysis of like, we know the guy has talent. We've seen the talent before. Now he's been so bad for long enough that nobody wants to play him. Now he gets the absolute smash spot matchup. Like this is everything coming together for me with Devonta Smith. And of course, I loved him last week. It was actually very similar last week on Sunday Night Football. I told everyone, I was like, I am jamming Devonta Smith into my lineups. I had him in like, I don't know, 80% of my lineups for Sunday Night Football, and he did nothing. And that was also a smash spot against the Dolphins. So like, there's no guarantee that it works. But I also like, speaking of like, people being due, narrative street, a lot of people, don't want to buy into narratives, but like at this point, you got to imagine like he's getting upset there too. And clearly AJ Brown is the alpha there. AJ Brown is a guy who maybe has a little bit more sway with the quarterback, but like Devonta Smith is also a great receiver who has been doing absolutely nothing. You'd think the Eagles can do whatever they want against the Commanders, and Devonta Smith is a guy who can just break off big plays here. So I don't know. I just think at 0.9% ownership, and on top of all that, they're expensive. Like so going to AJ Brown with Jalen Waddle, like that's 1,300. Or sorry, AJ Brown with Jalen Hurts, that's 1,300 more expensive than doing the Hurts to Devonta Smith stack. So I just think that this is a spot where I'm going to be playing them without Hurts in some lineups. I'm going to be playing a lot of Hurts Devonta Smith stacks, and the best reason is just sub 1% ownership. We've got him optimal nearly 2% of the time. And I just think that he's just too talented and too good of a spot to be that low owned. So there's not that much more to it than that for Devonta Smith. I think that it's a spot where he could blow up at low ownership. I think that like his ceiling, I still think is as high as just about anybody on the slate. Like he has those blow up games. He's not going to hit them that often, but when he hits them, he's got that 150 yards, 2 touchdown kind of upside in his game, and he's 6,700. So I'm going there, but I understand the counterpoints as well. Sounds like you do have some interest in some other. I'll throw it back to you and let you talk about some of the wide receivers that you like on this slate, Scott. And I guess we should talk about. We haven't really talked about anybody. I guess we haven't really talked about anybody other than Devontae Smith yet. So let's talk about the chalk here to start. Who do you like? Brandon Ayuk, or sorry, Kendrick Bourne and up. Who do you like? Who do you dislike above 15% ownership?
Yeah. So just again, I think the math, like I'm a very data guy. Just like the math fits better for AJ Brown over Tyreek and Chase. Like that's not something you'll ever feel you can ever feel confident in. So if you want to just hedge to ownership, like I totally get that. I will just say the math fits AJ Brown better. With Tyreek Hill, you could poke some serious holes in this. He's banged up. He's dealing with a hip injury. New England has had his number historically. Patriots kind of bracket him, sell out to stop him. He's never had more than 18 DK fantasy points against them with the Dolphins. Patriots shut him down the last time they played. Patriots have been great against opposing wide receiver ones this year, even after losing a few of their starting defensive backs. They shut down Devontae Adams. They shut down Stephon Diggs. And it's been like a narrative for a long time is New England selling out to stop opposing teams' wide receiver ones. With Chase, like you can argue against it, just that, well, T Higgins is finally fully healthy now. And maybe it's, a more, he's going to cut into his work. I don't know how much I buy that. I just think like Chase is the alpha and he's better than Higgins, but you could certainly make that argument. And Higgins ownership for both guys. So like Higgins ownership is so low. And in comparison to Chase, Waddle's ownership is so low in comparison to Tyreek. Waddle dealing with that injury. But again, we just said New England sells out to stop wide receiver ones. Ideally that sets up Waddle for more volume. Waddle seeing great volume. He had that back injury. He only ran 15 routes, but saw 6 targets, caught all 6 for 63 yards. It's an elite target per route run number. Before that, he had 9 targets in back-to-back games. Since week 2, he ranks behind only Tyreek Hill in XFP per route run. So amazing volume. Last year, he ranked 38th by the same stat and still finishes fantasy's wide receiver 8. So we've been saying it. So I don't know why you're trying to go back off of it and pivot to Devonta Smith. It's coming at some point, and I'd rather be a week early than a week late on that. Neither of these guys were super high on my list. It's just like clear and obvious leverage spots. Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, T Higgins makes a lot of sense. Can you scroll back up? As far as like cash plays, I'd say Thielen. Josh Downs. Where do you guys have Josh Downs?
We have.
I guess I'm a little contrarian on him. Just if you only look at Gardner Minshew starts, he's been above Pittman in both stats, but he's been wide receiver 13 by fantasy points per game, wide receiver 15 by XFP per game. 2 of his 3 games came in bottom 3 matchups. Now he has an amazing matchup. Marshawn Lattimore may or may not, but probably will shadow Michael Pittman. They've been hemorrhaging production to the slot, so it's now a great spot for him. 4,500. Brandon Ayuk, Kendrick Bourne is chalk. Like that seems stupid to me with Juju Smith-Schuster back. I would much rather play Josh Downs. Much better play in my opinion. Terry McLaurin, where do you have him?
9.5%.
That's another strong cash play for me. Zay Flowers, I get. He's a cash play for me, but he's probably a fade for tournaments. This is like an insane matchup. Arizona bottom 5 against outside wide receivers. Amazing spot for him. I just think he's like overrated. And I've been saying this since before he was drafted, but like from a fantasy perspective, like, oh, wow, he's 13th in target share. He's 2nd in design target rate, but he's only 27th in XFP per game, only 33rd in fantasy points per game. That's below his salary. He's wide receiver 22. If you take out just one game, he's 75th in air yards per game. Really suggests like he does not have a tournament winning ceiling, more of a high floor play. That would be me critiquing that ownership. Kendrick Bourne, again, makes no sense to me. I think Nico Collins might be the best GPP wide receiver play of the slate. I also love Tank Dell. Just absolute no-brainers. Another reason why I love CJ Stroud stacks.
Nico at 14% projected ownership. We have Tank Dell down at I'm reading this stuff off because we are going to put this out in podcast as well. I realize that I like show stuff.
Oh, this goes up as a podcast?
It has not yet been a podcast on our channel at some point, and who knows if I'm actually going to get it out tonight because I go immediately to NBA Live before lock after this. But just in case, we have Tank Dell at 12% projected ownership as well. So getting some ownership at both like the value guys who allow you to pay up for other spots.
I don't know how much I need to dig into it, but it's just like clear and established ceiling, perhaps unrivaled ceiling at their respective price tags. Collins is balling out. He ranks 4th among all wide receivers in yards per route run. That's like the GOAT stat that is basically just like, here's who the best wide receivers are. Highs of 30.6, 28.8 DraftKings fantasy points. Dell, he's exceeded 20 in 2 of his last 3 full games. It's a great schematic matchup. Carolina runs single high coverage at one of the highest rates. Houston has been shredding single high coverage, 5.23 yards per route run for Nico Collins against single high. Favorite GPP wide receiver plays. We talked about some of the others. Jordan Addison, I think, makes a lot of sense. I don't know that Jari Alexander is going to shadow just because he's banged up coming into this game, listed as questionable. I don't know how much that matters. Green Bay has still been elite against outside wide receivers, but I mean, the dude balled out last week despite missing multiple drives due to cramps. He was seeing like Justin Jefferson levels of volume, looked really good with that volume.
This is the past 2 weeks for the Vikings, just pulling up the route participation. Just wanted to see whether KJ Osborne was still getting the elite. Actually, let me just look at week 7 in particular, because Brandon Powell was a little bit more involved than I anticipated last week.
If you look into it, it's like, okay, Addison comes off the field due to cramp, whatever it was, and he got like 5 of the next 8 targets, and then Addison came back and he did nothing.
Okay, that's a good note for sure.
What you could do is filter out the fourth quarter, and then you'll see Addison's target per route run spike. No, you're in. Oh yeah, you could do that. We did this last.
I know
we did that last week.
But I guess I'm not filtering it out. I'm just showing all quarters here, but we can, still. All right, so we have all quarters now. Let me close out of this. So looking at all quarters for, so Powell ran his most routes in the third quarter. Jordan Addison in the third quarter. Wait, he ran 9 routes.
Fourth quarter. He only ran 3.
Gotcha. Yeah. He only ran, fourth quarter, 3 routes. Powell, fourth quarter.
I guess he only ran 6. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, but still, that is a good note that Addison missed time. Powell, I guess in terms of targets, maybe saw some more targets. He got a couple targets there in the fourth quarter, third and fourth quarter, 2 targets each for Brandon Powell. So maybe just got a little bit more usage there with Jordan Addison out. But we still had, KJ Osborne very involved, running routes. First quarter only ran 6 routes, but 9, 8, 10. Just making sure that KJ Osborne, before I play him, I want to double check that he's still elite in terms of route participation, and at least in terms of route participation, maybe not elite in that many places, but in terms of route participation, he's been very good.
I like Hawkinson a lot, but we'll get to that when we get there.
He's only 6,200. Hawkinson got like 12 targets last week, but we'll talk about tight ends next. I'm trying to find. I should sort by salary. Easier to find KJ Osborne that way. I want to say he's 47. Yeah, 4,700. We have him at 1.1% ownership, 3.3% chance to be an optimal. So I'm going to go there, but I understand that you're not a Osborne believer, so it makes it hard for you to want to go there. You want me to sort by ownership?
Putting it mildly, Neil.
That you're not a believer. That's fair.
But yeah, I get it. We're not yet in the contrarian range. George Pickens, I will say, one of the most mind-blowing stats I found this season. Since week 2, he ranks top 12 in target share, top 10 in first read target share, top 7 in yards per route run, top 7 in depth adjusted yards per target over expectation, top 3 in yards after the catch per reception. I was a hater. This guy's been playing out of his damn mind.
Yeah.
It's been hard to tell just because Kenny Pickett's been so bad. They're so run heavy. But he's been balling out. He out targeted Deontay last week, which is notable. He only did that twice all of last year. And it's a great matchup. It's a top 3 matchup for outside wide receivers. I don't know how much exposure I'll have, but like I just get it with him. And then Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley. This is just like this might be the best matchup of the week, depending on the status of Joey Porter, Levi Wallace, James Pierre. They're all questionable. If like any 2 of those guys miss, they're going to be starting cornerbacks who haven't played a snap since 2021. And they're already an easy like top 3 matchup for wide receivers. Digging into the schematics, you can make a case for Kirk over Ridley. They're funneling production over the middle of the field, which is where Kirk excels, and where Ridley has 0 yards. Like he's strictly a boundary guy. There's some other stuff digging into it. I would just say I would prefer Kirk just because he's been so much more productive, and like Ridley has been so bad.
Yeah.
But those are the last guys on my list of non-contrarians, and then I have a ton of contrarian plays I feel really strongly about.
All right, I love to hear that. I'll open it right back up to you. Spit those contrarian plays at us.
Christian Watson, I know he might be banged up. He suffered that injury late in last week's game, and he's been banged up all year. He did practice in full. He's not on the injury report. Matchup looks favorable, especially for him. Vikings are giving up the 3rd most deep fantasy points per game to wide receivers, bottom 10 to outside wide receivers. And really, this is just like my guy, Christian Watson, who's like of the archetype that works better for tournaments, like massive ceiling, low floor every single week. But if you just look into the numbers, like this looks like an elite talent, 97th percentile athlete, had a 99th percentile yards per route run his final season in college. As a rookie, 95th percentile yards per route run, which like everyone who's in the top 5 percentile was a future Pro Bowl wide receiver who was awesome for fantasy. Okay. Since he was a starter in week 10 of last year, he's been awesome. You just got to kind of have to take out all the games where he played under 60% snap share. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of them, but that's the question. I just see a lot of upside for a guy who like no one wants to play after flopping last week, which like honestly wasn't a great matchup. I don't remember how much Patrick Surtain shadowed, but I did see him on him for at least a few routes. And then after that is a 49ers wide receiver I am really excited to play. Do you want to guess who it is?
Ooh, 49. I mean, is it Juwan Jennings?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Juwan Jennings season.
Juwan Jennings, he is 3,800. Yeah, he smashed last week. That was a showdown slate, and I was playing all the Ray McLeod based on the previous week, and then it was Juwan Jennings getting all the action in that game with Debo out. 1.6% projected ownership. Do you want to expand?
Yeah, so Ayuk struggled last week because Byron Murphy faced him in shadow coverage. Murphy hasn't been good this year, but like he's always been awesome whenever he shadows. Like I just think that should be his role. But anyway, he only saw 6 targets, 5 catches, 57 yards. Jennings had a team high, 9 targets, 5 catches, 54 yards. Ayuk's matchup is brutal this week. Bengals rank best in the league against opposing wide receiver ones, 4th worst against wide receiver twos. They rank 12th best against outside wide receivers, 2nd worst against slot wide receivers. That's where Jennings is going to run 60% of his routes. So recent volume, matchup, no ownership, low price tag. It all checks out. No one wants to play him. Your counter arguments that he's not good, that's fine. I get it. But otherwise, the math works beyond that. Another guy, a frequently named individual on this show,
I know it's
Rashid Shaheed.
I was about to bring him up. I was going to ask you about
Hell
him.
Yeah. I love when we're aligned.
2.3% projected ownership, 4.3% chance to be an optimal. He's only 3,900. We both talked about that. We have some interest in Derek Carr here. Is there anything more to it than that?
Just a proven GPP ceiling.
Yeah.
He's cleared 18 DK in 3 of his last 11 games. But to me, what stands out is this is the most zone sensitive wide receiver in fantasy. Someone brought this up in the comments last week.
Yep.
And I thought this was like a great point where it's like, well, even the teams who play zone at the lowest rate are still playing zone at like 55 to 60% of their snaps. So like, it's not a big deal. And like, that's 100% true, but you take a player, like nothing matters within the middle bulk of your sample, but at the polar extremes, this is massive. So you take a player who's as zone sensitive as Shaheed, and you're talking about the difference between like a top 5 zone heavy defense and a bottom 5 zone heavy defense. And that's legitimately worth like a swing of 40% to 50% in terms of expected receiving yards in a single game. Like that's how big the swings can be. And like Shaheed, since the start of last season, among 130 qualifying wide receivers, ranks 12th best in yards per route run against zone, ranks 101st against man. And that's notable because Colts play zone at the 3rd highest rate. They've also struggled against outside wide receivers. Michael Thomas, he's like wide receiver 45 by fantasy points per game with like 0 volatility. I just don't see any upside there. Shaheed to me would be the upside play beyond Olave, who I do like. Did I not mention Olave?
Yeah, I was wondering if we actually mentioned Olave, but certainly somebody that I was going to bring up. 5% projected ownership.
Wow. I like him more than Shaheed. He's like Waddle to me. He's like Pollard to me. Just a clear regression candidate. If you want to throw out the game, Derek Carr had a bum shoulder, only completed 2 passes, 10 plus yards downfield on like 57 attempts. And then that other game where Olave hurt his foot leading into the game. They weren't sure if he was going to play. Saints also won 34-0. If you just throw out those 2 games, he's hit 10 targets in 5 of 5, 86 receiving yards in 4 of 5, would rank top 3 in targets per game, top 3 in air yards per game. And so just like a clear and glaring regression candidate. I get that Carr kind of sucks, but it's an absolute awesome matchup. This is a seriously talented player, way more talented than this price tag, leverage off of Kamara. So definitely like him. I don't know why I forgot about him earlier.
Yeah, Josh Gillen brings up so many mouths to feed on the Saints with Kamara back. I mean, I think I'm always double stacking with Carr and just hoping that they get a little bit condensed.
Right.
Either Kamara, Olave, Shaheed. I might play a little bit of Michael Thomas. I'm not sure. I agree. Like he's probably the one that I have the 4th most interest in on the Saints, but I still might get there a little bit in some Saints stacks. But I think that it's just you're hoping that they condense a little bit to a couple of those options. But
you would be banking on Carr not targeting Kamara 14 times. Like maybe the wide receivers actually do something.
Yeah. All right. Any other wide receivers that you want to talk about? Yeah,
Jalen Hyatt, 3,100. He's it's a bad matchup for sure. He's maybe not that good, but Darren Waller's banged up. He's listed as questionable. After him, it's kind of been like an even split in terms of targets. Wandale over the last 2 weeks had 10, Hyatt had 9, Slayton had 7. Hyatt playing well above Wandale in full time by route share, but by air yards over the last 2 weeks, Hyatt has 227. That's 8th most among all wide receivers, well ahead of Slayton, well ahead of Robinson. So it's just a bet on, what if he catches 1 or 2 of his 3 or 4 deep targets, and like that's all you need, especially at 3,100.
I know you say you're not going to Zach Wilson, but we have some nice Garrett Wilson, 4% projected ownership, 7% chance to be an optimal. Any interest in Garrett Wilson against the Giants?
Yeah, he was the last guy on my list. Clear leverage off of Breece Hall. Insane usage. It's hard to tell just because the Jets are so run heavy and Zach Wilson stings, but he leads the league in first read target share, 45%. You could argue the matchup either way. It could be top 10. It could be bottom 10 based on the numbers I typically look at. But one thing I thought was interesting, shout out to Rich Rebar who came up with this, but the Giants blitz at the 3rd highest rate in the league. And Garrett Wilson ranks 1st among all receivers in targets per route run, 2nd in yards per route run against the blitz. So we know this Wink Martindale blitz heavy scheme that Wilson's going to be the guy Zach Wilson locks onto, which, was already the case, but even more so now.
Yep. All right. Do you have more Galaxy Brain plays for us, or are you?
No, man. No, that's it for me.
Shoot. I am just knocked my microphone. All right, let me see if I have any others that I feel the need to ask.
I did write up Drake London, who's right there, and then I deleted it from my article. I just think this game is going to be so gross. Okay.
What about the Rams receiver? So that was one thing we didn't talk about Matthew Stafford, and that was one that, as I was looking at the top stacks, I was like, should I be more interested in the name? We have Stafford at under 1% ownership with a 6% chance to be in the top stack, just a 2.6% chance to be in the top value stack. So the reason that he doesn't grade out that well is because his best receivers are so expensive, but they're also like really good and they really condensed targets. Like, any interest in playing Matthew Stafford, stacking him with either Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua or both?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a ton of sense just because these guys are awesome, and target volume is so concentrated in this offense just to these two guys, where it's possible that they're just like, they can both finish top 5 in any given week, which is just so insane. I just have a hard time imagining it comes this week. Like, if you wanted to go back to schedule adjusted, Dallas has really shut down wide receivers this year.
Yeah, so if we go, I need LA. Okay.
So wide receiver total, but flip it.
Wide receiver total.
So click total again.
Yep.
And then click it again. Yeah, and so it's the case for both Dallas and Los Angeles, but they're both top 5 against wide receivers. Although Dallas neutral versus or Rams neutral versus slot, which is an argument for CD, but yeah, it's just Dallas tough against both slot and outside wide receivers, which is tough for both Kupp, who plays a lot in the slot, and Nacua, who's more out wide. Although the Rams are neutral against slot, which is good for CD Lamb. I just don't see a lot of fantasy potential in this game, but hey, if I'm wrong, like, who knows? Yeah.
I should give another plug to both of our sites. So if you're interested in the fantasy points data, you can find a link to I think it's just fantasypoints.com is in the description of this video. Right now, Scott, if I remember correctly, you don't need a promo code for any of your stuff. Like, it's just like you get the discount when you sign up.
Automatic discount. Yep.
Okay. And the link, as I said, is in the description of this video. And then similarly, the link to all of the stochastic stuff is in the description of this video as well. You can find all of the best deals. So if we've got a discount going on, it's going to be in the link in the description of this video. So if you're interested in checking out our stuff, you can find the stuff from both sites in the description of this video. But I want to actually, before we move on, let me just peruse the the wide receivers real quick before we move on to tight ends, just because I had a lot of like names that I was calibrating earlier, and I just want to make sure we don't miss any of them, because I want to hear your thoughts. We already talked about KJ Osborne.
Oh, I wrote up DeMario Douglas and then I deleted it.
I was actually going to bring him up.
If Juju Smith-Schuster is a healthy scratch, like, both of those guys are back in play. I will just say Miami, especially now with injuries, are probably more of a reverse slot funnel. So that's why I deleted him. But yeah, he was in the mix. Marvin Mims, if Brandon Powell sits out, maybe he's in play. Another one of my guys.
He was another one that I was just about to bring up. Like, he's been one, like, if he can just get on the field, like we've been saying all year, like if they just start playing him a little bit more, he's due to at some point go off, you would think. I think that we've touched on all of the players that I really wanted to bring up then. For now, maybe I'll come back if I think of somebody later, but I was going to bring up Michael Gallup. I mean, you mentioned Michael Gallup getting out targeting CeeDee Lamb as a negative for that Dallas stack, but does it make you interested at all in a 3,400 Michael Gallup?
No, again, it's a bad matchup, and I think Gallup stinks. But yeah, I mean, like, he had 8 more targets than Lamb last week, more targets than Lamb over the last 5 weeks. I get it. I probably wrote him up early in the week too, and then just deleted him. But
And similarly, Brandon Cooks, I mean, 4,600 for Brandon Cooks. He finally had at least one good game, and I don't know if it was last week or the game before, but 1.5% ownership, 4,600 is at least a little bit interesting to me.
We started with Dak, right? I'm probably just kind of fading that whole passing game and Rams passing game.
Speaking of games that I know you're fading, and I'm ready for you to tell me no on these, but I'm like, there's a part of me that kind of wants a Galaxy Brain, like under the assumption that Carolina is going to change things up at least somewhat in terms of scheming to get other guys open, like maybe DJ Chark or Jonathan Mingo, like at their price tags. We've got DJ Chark at 3,800, 1% ownership. We have him with a 4% chance of being optimal, and then Jonathan Mingo we have at 3% ownership, 3% chance of being optimal at 3,400. Any interest in those in the largest fields?
See, you're making me angry, Neil, because I wanted to be very overexposed to AJ Brown. So you're like introducing uncertainty by mentioning Devonta Smith that I don't want to hear right now. It's the same thing for Adam Thielen, right? Like I've just been playing him every week for 5 straight weeks, and it hasn't worked out poorly for me at all. So I kind of just want to keep doing that. So don't make me nervous on that, but maybe I should be. Maybe they Thielen's been holding them back and they need to spread the ball around more. I don't think that's the case, but who knows?
I'm going to lean into that. Thielen is the problem. They need to cut that guy. Stop.
The only good player on the team is the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Benny says, try to detect when Neil is peeing. I'm peeing basically the whole show, Benny. That's why I wear the diapers, of course. No. Kidding, Scott. I pee immediately before the show so that I can hold it during the show. That's my brand, is that I don't drink anything before the show. I pee right before the show. It's the only way I can get through it.
You're regular Scott Hansen.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Just peeing before the show. All right. All right. We can move on to tight ends. And we've got some good tight ends on this slate. Of course, Hawkinson, you mentioned already that you like Hawkinson, but I'll sort by ownership here. Of these guys in double digits. So our double digit tight end ownership right now is going to Trey McBride, 15%, Evan Ingram, 14%, Jake Ferguson, 13%, TJ Hawkinson, 13%, and Travis Kelce, 12%. What do you think about these ownership? Anybody you're going to be overweight on? Anybody you're fading here?
I'd say Trey McBride feels too low. Like he could, if you wanted to argue for him as like a 50% guy, I would certainly get that.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, he was already surpassing Ertz last week and the week before when Ertz was healthy. The tight end is a clear focal point of this offense. Ertz and McBride rank respectively 4th and 5th among all tight ends in targets per route run. And now you're taking away one of those players and giving the other one a full-time role. McBride has played well this year. He ranks behind only Travis Kelce in yards per route run. He's arguably the best play of the slate, the most mispriced player of the slate. Counter argument against him is just the volatility inherent to the position. But
so it's funny that you are so in on Trey McBride, because I was so ready for you to tell me that you were with me on being out on Trey McBride. That 15%. To me, it's like he's got Josh Dobbs throwing in the ball against Baltimore. They're going to put up 0 points. Such a tough spot. But I know you say yards per route run is a great forward-looking indicator of how a player will do it. And I didn't realize how well he's doing in that metric. I don't think of Trey McBride as somebody who has really done much in the NFL so far. So to me, he's like somebody that I'm ready to write off whenever he gets ownership. But you're making a compelling case there for Trey McBride. Unfortunately, maybe I can't just full fade him. All right. What about the rest of these guys getting ownership?
Yeah, I would not play Evan Ingram in tournaments at that ownership, not even close. He ranks 30th among all tight ends in XTD per game. Has
What's
0
XTD per game. Expected touchdowns.
Yeah. You just don't look at him at all near the end zone. If DraftKings were a site where tight end touchdowns were worth nothing, he would be like tied with TJ Hawkinson right behind Travis Kelce. But that's just like enough of an argument you need against a tight end who's chalky. He just doesn't have the touchdown upside. Ferguson is like tricky for me. Like I wrote him up. I thought he was like, interesting because through the first 4 weeks of the season, he ranked 2nd in targets per route run behind only Kelce. The only issue was he was just a part-time player. And then the last 2 weeks, his route shares jumped to 80%, but his targets per route run has just totally fallen off of a cliff. Rams are like a massive tight end funnel spot, but if he's the third highest owned tight end on the slate, I don't know how much he excites me.
Okay. Anybody else you want to talk on these chalk guys?
Hawkinson is an awesome play, makes all the sense in the world, especially given our reservations about Addison in a tough matchup. He's had 8 targets in 10 of his last 11 games. He ranks 5th among all players in targets per route run since Jefferson went down. Green Bay definitely softer against tight ends than wide receivers. Travis Kelce, like, I don't think anything needs to be said. I think he should be number 2 right behind Trey McBride. It is a best possible matchup. He is blowing the doors off of any other tight end. He's basically like equivalent to some of these highest priced wide receivers, especially if you account for the injuries he's had, which has been limiting his route share. He's been over 65% only twice this year. One of those came last week. So like ideally that continues to grow, just like an insane play.
Plus, the best stat, Scott, which is he gets 100 fantasy points per game when Taylor Swift is in attendance.
Oh, she's not going to be there this week.
Oh, she's not going to be there. Well, then you can't play Travis Kelce.
Oh, man. Is that what it is?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Damn. Schultz, Logan, Andrews, fine. I like Kittle a lot. Wanted to talk about him.
Okay.
Just like an obvious, like, great GPP play always. Over his last 11 games, he averages 24 fantasy points per game in his top 50% of games versus only 5 in his bottom 50%. So like super volatile, but that's good for GPP, especially when Debo's out. Over the last 4 seasons, 5 of his top 7 highest scoring games came where Samuel played on fewer than 60% of the snaps. So that is a testament to his ceiling. Also, just by like averages, it's basically like with Samuel, 11 fantasy points per game, without 19.5. Matchups really good. Cincinnati ranks best in the league against opposing wide receiver ones. That's tough for Ayuk, but he ranks second worst against tight ends. So it's a clear tight end funnel spot. So I like him a lot. And I guess that's it. You can make a case for Darren Waller. He's banged up. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, but Tyrod's been awesome for him. He's had a target share of like 25% or more in 3 straight games, ahead of Travis Kelce, top 3 in XFP fantasy points scored. Due to this like recent upswing, he's basically like tied with Sam Laporta in every single stat minus touchdowns. But like the counter argument again is he's banged up, and also Giants have like a disgustingly low total. But the Jets are something of a tight end funnel. Only other player would be like Connor Hayward, who stinks, but he's basically minimum priced. Led the position in route share last week, but I would much rather just play Trey McBride.
Dallas Goedert, somebody that I have some interest in, just because
right.
I'm going to those Philly stacks, and even outside of Philly stacks, I think he's playable. I mean, we just saw Darren Waller go for what, 7 for 98 and a touchdown against this Commanders defense. So as you said, maybe you consider him more of a receiver, but I still think 4,600 price tag for Dallas Goedert is interesting.
Do you think it's possible to go tight end and flex this week?
I do. I think I'm never really totally opposed to tight end and flex. It's you can see the projections for tight ends just like any other position. Like if they project well enough, they probably have that top end in their range of outcomes generally. So I'm usually not opposed to tight end and flex. It looked better to me last week. Like last week I was getting to a lot of it. I don't think I'm going to get to a lot of it this week, but it's not something that I'm opposed to necessarily. What do you think?
I think if there were a week for it, I think this would make a lot of sense. I probably wouldn't go there, but I get it.
Okay, fair enough. Let me throw one more name at Luke Musgrave here. We have him at 2% projected ownership against the Vikings. 3,500. The price is okay there for Musgrave. I haven't looked at his receiving metrics for last week, so I can pull that up. What his route share looked like. Oh, I have it split by quarter here still, so let me take that off. And we can just see his total route participation from week 7. Oh, I already have. Okay. We had, I guess, 65% route participation last week. I don't know. I guess Vikings defense been doing pretty. They've been doing okay lately. So maybe it's not the best spot for Luke Musgrave, but at 3,500, maybe it's just something that I keep trying to make happen and it hasn't really happened yet. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I just like never even looked at him, but
that's fair.
That's fine. Like this is the most volatile position after defense, so you can kind of play anyone you want.
Yeah, true. Hunter Henry, we have him at just 1% ownership against that Miami defense. A little bit interesting to me. I know Mike Gesicki is the one who just scored a touchdown. But Hunter Henry, I think, is a little bit interesting at 3,700. No, I'm just throwing, I'm kind of reaching a little bit, but just a couple names that
I'll give you one. A guy I didn't write up, Taysom Hill, over the last 2 weeks, his snap shares jumped from 33% to 60%. Over the last 2 weeks, he ranks 7th among all tight ends in air yards, 6th in targets with 13, 5th in XFP, 5th in fantasy points. He also has 6 carries. Half of those came inside the 10-yard line. He also leads the tight end position in pass attempts over this span. I just think he could be someone who like everyone's missing. And at 4K, if he's getting 6.5 targets per game, 1.5 carries per game, and he gets a goal line touchdown, I probably won't play him. I didn't write him up, but he was someone I kind of thought long and hard about.
All right. Another good Galbraith play there. Do we want to let's touch briefly on defenses, because I know you do sometimes have sometimes have opinions on defenses, and you already kind of shit on the one that I was excited to bring up.
Oh no,
there was one defense that I was going to bring up, and you were like, the Eagles have been really disappointing. Everybody wants to play them in DFS, and they've been disappointing.
Oh no, they're a great fantasy play. I'm just saying, like, against opposing quarterbacks, against opposing wide receivers, they really struggle. But I mean, like, this is going to be a sack fest. Like, are you kidding?
Exactly. I'm like, this Eagles defense against Sam Howell, like 12 sacks incoming. So to me, the Eagles are like kind of a great, like, it's rare that you find a great pay up spot for a defense, but I think this is a spot where I'm probably going to, if I'm not getting it, I'm going to give them a projection boost to make sure that I get to some Eagles defense, just because honestly, like, I don't think double digit sacks is out of the question here. Any other defenses you want to talk about?
Falcons against Will Levis. Definitely stands out. Vikings, 2,500,
yeah.
Clear value.
Oh yeah.
Jaguars, 2,800 value. That's definitely what stands out to me. Commanders is honestly fine too at 2,300.
No, Rams you want to play Devontae Smith in that game, but okay.
All right, actually, Rams at 2,400. They're probably just as good.
Okay. All right, I think that's a good. Like,
I'll probably go cheap this week, but like most expensive I'll go is Falcons. But that's just because like I never pay up for defense. But like,
and that's honestly, I think a lot of the time you do see like pros rarely pay up at defense. I think that I'm more willing than most to pay up at defense. Yeah, Jason says Kelsey is out. There's no Swift of the game. Exactly right. You can't play Travis Kelsey with no Taylor Swift. All right.
Oh, pull up Beantown's comment too.
Beantown. Oop, wait, that's the wrong one. Oh, for Taysom.
Yeah, isn't he still out? Let me see. Oh no, yeah, Juwan Johnson's back. All right, never mind. Jimmy Graham is questionable, is what it is. He has an illness. Yeah, Johnson's back. Yeah, you're probably right. Again, it was Super Galaxy Brain. Guess there's a reason I didn't write him up.
All right, fair enough. Bengals defense, big top dog asking about. I mean, with Brock Purdy in there, would have liked him better with Sam Darnold, but like, I think it's fine. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Bengals defense, what is the price tag? 2,200, 3% projected ownership. Looks okay. You want to make some lineups?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we're gonna make 2 lineups probably. Sometimes Scott talks me into 3, but we'll see. We'll see. We're going to make it for the Millie because we're going to win $1 million with this lineup. Do you want to start the stack here, or should I?
You can.
You know exactly where I'm going. I'm going straight to. I'm going to force you to have a little bit of exposure to my Hurts Devontae Smith stack, and then
All
I'll
right,
throw it to you.
nice.
How are we going to fill in around these two?
This lineup that doesn't cost me anything every week, but I stand to make 50% if it wins a milli. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Nice risk reward there.
That is. You're making out with these.
Okay, so do we want to dub stack it? Is that the question?
We could. That is the question. That is a great place to start. We could dub stack it with AJ Brown. We could dub stack it with Dallas Goedert. What do you think?
I'll play McLaurin for right now.
Okay.
And then I guess we can revisit Goddard or AJ Brown.
All right. Doing a bring back from the Commanders. Great start here. We can see if we have the price for Goddard or Brown. So we're going pretty contrarian here with Devontae Smith at 1% projected ownership already. So we can afford to eat some chalk if we want to here. We have 49.66 remaining per player. Do we want to put in a defense just to get a better idea of what our actual salary is for the position players?
Yeah.
All right. So you don't want to pay up for defenses. Bengals looked okay.
Falcons.
Oh yeah, Falcons was a good shout out there. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so now we're up to 53.80 per player. I think the best value plays below that price tag, we're probably at wide receiver. So should we fill in some of the cheaper, a cheap wide receiver here to bring up our average salary?
Yeah, how cheap do you want to go? Do you want to go Downs? Do you want to go
Downs or Shaheed could work.
Jennings.
Jennings could work also.
Hyatt.
Yeah, we got a number of options here. Let's do one of Shaheed or Downs. So those are my preference.
Yeah, I'll go with Downs.
Jennings. Okay. Going Josh Downs. Now we're up to 5,500 per player.
Does that mean we can't do Jonathan Taylor now? That's okay.
I think we can still make it work. If we go cheap tight end,
I say we pivot to Mustard. Or are we now too contrarian?
Well, now we have 5,500 left per player. So if we throw Mostert in there, like we're gonna be really not having a lot of salary left over.
Okay.
So I think for this line,
just put in McBride.
Yep.
And now we're gonna have.
I'm forcing you to play Devontae Smith. You're forcing me to play Trey McBride. All right, that's fair. All right, so now we're up to 6,400 left per player. So now I would think Jonathan Taylor makes a lot of sense here. What do you think?
Stacked with Downs? I guess that's fine. You want to do?
I think that's fine, right? I mean, that's we've seen that win the milli several times. But I just put him in the flex. Throw him in the RB. Jonathan Taylor. All right, so 2 spots left. We've got 1 running back, 1 flex remaining. So if we go cheap at running back, we could do an AJ Brown double stack. We could throw Dallas Goedert in here, go expensive at running back.
All right, play AJ Brown, and let's see what our options are.
5,100. Miles Sanders.
Yikes.
Chuba Hubbard. Yeah.
Hold on. DeMarcado or Darrell Henderson?
All right, so we already have Trey McBride in there. I think I lean toward Darrell Henderson of those.
All right.
Or we could, we could get rid of AJ Brown.
Or here's what you do. Here's what you do real quick.
Yep.
X out of Henderson, and then drop all the way down to Rams defense.
Yep.
And now let's see what we can do.
Now we have 5,600. Alexander
Your boy
Madison.
Gus.
Oh yeah, Gus Bus. All right.
I think I'd rather play Henderson personally, but this is your lineup. You started it. If you.
This is my lineup. Okay.
This is yours. You
this
can
is my lineup. Call.
I'd be happy.
Gus Bus with Trey McBride. A little bit of secondary correlation there. Yeah, we're doing Gus Bus in my lineup, and then we're gonna have you. You lead the way for the next lineup. I think this looks good. I think there are a lot of ways for this to work out. Loving that Eagles stack. Eagles double stacked for all the money. Is it going to let me? It let me. All right. It's letting me enter lineups again. All right. Let's enter another one. Now I think I got to go just here again.
Oh, do we have any salary left over?
Not. I think we had maybe 100 left over.
Yeah, I was going to say Vikings or Rams defense. I don't know if you have a lean there. I might like Vikings a little more.
All right. Let's see here. Yes. Happy to go to my Vikings defense.
Let's do it.
All right. All right. Now let's build another. And you can start us off with your favorite starting point.
Shroud double.
Yes. Love that too.
Nice.
We going to Nico and Tank or somewhere else?
Nico and Tank.
Beautiful. All right, and then of course, so you've got your part of the lineup. Now I'm going to throw in Jonathan Mingo there. No, just kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. All right, so we've got our beautiful Houston double to start. Now we have 55-50 left over. This is a relatively cheap starting point, so we can do a completely different lineup if we want to. We should do another DST. Should we throw in? Should we try the Falcons again, and then we can always pivot down if we want to?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Over 6,000 left per player. Do you want to do Mostert in this one? Like we should be more able to pay up here.
Yeah.
All right. And this is not a super chalky lineup, right? Fairly contrarian. I know Mostert definitely contrarian. Nico and Tank, actually, I think they were getting some ownership there. Let me take a look.
Yeah, we had them lower, but
I think
you guys are probably right. Okay. Ours are going to update tonight anyway, but
yeah. So we have Nico at 14%. We have Tank at 12%. So, not contrarian, not like super overwhelmingly chalk either. But we got some chalky parts and we got the contrarian Mostert in there. So I think that's a good start. Want to throw in another wide receiver, another running back. What are you thinking here?
I want to make things difficult for you because it's fun for me.
All right.
Let's put in Kelsey.
Ooh, all right. That's unique. 47.66 left per player. All right. There are a lot of decent options here. I still think
we could pivot down to like Kittle if we want to go contrarian, or McBride if we want to go chalky.
No, we can make this work. We haven't played Rashid Shaheed yet, and I kind of like Rashid Shaheed this week.
Okay.
What do you think?
All right, you're the boss.
All right, we're doing Shaheed. 5,200 left per player with 2 spots left. So if we threw Jonathan Taylor in this one, we would have 4,200 left in the flex. Is that what we want to do, or do you want to do like a cheaper running back, more expensive running back? We could go all the way down, maybe play a punt tight end in the flex. What do you think?
What happens if we go Jawan Jennings or Jalen Hyatt? What can we afford one of the chalk running backs?
Yeah, we can't pay all the way up then, but we'll be able to get somebody. Wait, what are the price tags?
Why don't you use the search button?
I don't know. I don't know why I don't.
Jennings is 3,800. Hyatt's 3,100.
Right. Who do you prefer of those two?
Jennings is the better value based on median. Hyatt probably has more upside.
We're trying to win.
All right, let's go.
Trying to win a milli here. We have 7,300 left over, just enough for Alvin Kamara if we wanted to. Go to Travis Etienne. A couple of your guys up toward the top there.
You cool with Kamara plus Shaheed?
Totally, yeah.
Okay, all right. There you have it.
All right, there we have 2 lineups. Are we good with 2?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, we are good with just 2 lineups. I feel good about them. This is our week to win the milli, Scott. We've been waiting.
Oh, no. We gotta make some changes. I'm sorry.
We got to make some changes. You can change this lineup, or
yeah, that one. I'm sorry. Thielen's a must there.
Thielen is a must here. Okay, let's.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. We're gonna edit this lineup. All right, so Thielen is.
So we could ditch
6,600.
Kelsey or Raheem. That's fine.
Okay. Which would you rather ditch?
Let's ditch Kelsey just because that's an easier fix.
Okay. And then where should we throw Thielen in here? To the flex and see.
Yeah.
All right, we'll throw Thielen into the flex. Now we have 4,900 left over, so we can still play a nice tight end. We can throw Goddard in there
if you want. I was gonna say McBride again, but maybe I'm just a madman.
Goddard
does fit perfectly.
Goddard does fit in nicely.
Could be fate.
It could be. I mean, we would have money left over.
Oh, all right. Put in McBride.
All right. Can't believe you're forcing me to play McBride in 2 lineups. All right, 2,100 left over.
Can we get to what? McCaffrey, or is there a Shaheed upgrade we're not seeing?
So that'd be 6,000 at wide receiver, or actually in the flex if we move Thielen to there. So it'd be 6,000 for a flex play if we really wanted to. So we could play Breece Hall if we.
Oh, okay. There you go. Done. Easy. We're unique enough.
Yeah.
Eat the running back chalk. Fuck it.
Yep. All right. So Thielen, and then we're going to Breece in the flex.
Game over.
Game over. Millie Maker 1.
Watch the original lineup. Sans Thielen wins it all.
I'm gonna be so sad. Scott. I like that though. I think this is a well constructed lineup. We've got a double stack with the bring back. Looks really nice to me. So we can accept it if we don't win it, but we are going to win it, of course. All right. Any final words, Scott?
Don't you have a show to do?
I do. In 30 minutes, I've got a show. So we made it through.
Minutes.
That's why we moved it half an hour earlier, because I was like,
if
we got to give ourselves the opportunity to go. So yeah, in half an hour, I'll be on NBA Live before lock. Yeah, we're good.
All right. Well, I had a blast. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Subscribe to fantasypoints.com. Subscribe to Stochastic. And thank you.
Absolutely. Those are great final words from Scott. Thank you guys for watching, as Scott said, and thank you for actually, buying some of the product last week. That really does help us continue to do the show, which Scott and I both love doing. We would love to not even have to worry about any kind of sales at all. We just love talking football, but it is part of the game. So appreciate those of you who did sign up for our products last week. Hit that like button, as Scott said. Subscribe to the channels if you haven't already done so, and hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Good luck this weekend. Let's win a milli.